So you decide you're going to be number one on the leaderboard and you're holding that, you're number one in the world. You're getting a lot of growth from that. What does it take to maintain that? How much stress is that? Was the game still fun for you when you're trying to just be, that number one on the board for wins?
Obsession.
Yeah.
Obsession. They're going back to the
That's the
bodybuilding thing
theme.
where I
Yeah.
got,
Yep.
yeah, where I have the notebooks, years of food that, I weighed everything, I counted everything. That it's just that level of obsession. I
Hmm.
would get off of the game and I would immediately watch my stream back. I had like 3, 4 games that we lost where I was like, okay, where was the mistake?
Yeah.
Like film,
Yeah. You're watching the all 22.
Exactly. I would watch players that I was trying to take things from, Huskers, Symphony, Tifu if he played, just mouse and key players basically
Yeah.
that were significantly more mechanically skilled than me, and I could try to take one of their things that they do like Husker centering, Symphonies like flicks or like
Yeah.
stuff like that. And Turner's kind of hard to replicate because he's just the best at
He's a
everything he
freak,
does.
dude.
But
Any game he plays, he could
yeah.
like literally play for the first time and win. It's insane.
Yeah, I was trying to tell people that it's just like if you just heard of Tifu in Fortnite, you don't even really know, man. It's just every game that he's ever played, he's that good at.
I only know him from
So,
fishing, so I'm
I
just
mean,
kidding.
IRA he takes it into IRL,
I know, it's crazy.
Sorry to answer the previous question's second part. I was having a blast, man. With that level of obsession, all that mattered in my life at that point was getting better and winning at the
Hmm.
video game. That's all that mattered. So every single game, like not making any mistakes, or there's like certain feelings that I would chase within the game, sometimes in solos, sometimes in quads, depends on my mood. But a lot of the times when you're win grinding, it's quads. If you want to like be serious about it, you pretty much need the most people and the best.
Yeah.
And when you can just like call everything perfectly, and it feels like a book that you've read before or music that you've listened to 1,000 times. That's what the game that's happening in real time feels like. That's such an addicting feeling.
Yeah.
So I was just like I would chase that day after day after day to just like a composer in an orchestra was the feeling that I was chasing. I could just like consistently hit it, and it was just like a high that you're just living off of.
So you're grinding the leaderboard. You're number one. You're getting some backlash for your play style for just playing for the win. There was people who were playing a battle royale more like team deathmatch, and kills was all that mattered to them. But you got a lot of heat for being the most famous camper, in the world, basically. Were you expecting that backlash? And it probably wasn't the majority. It's probably just the loud minority. But were you expecting some of the hate that you got for playing for the win?
As I understood that it was COD, just see red dot, chase red dot. The
Yeah.
viewer base or the average player age is probably not super old, and I was just trying to play a BR. So like I said, I didn't really care too much about the hate that I would get from people because I had already grinded BRs in PUBG and Blackout. I
Mhm.
had been like held leaderboard positions. I knew how to win them. So I was just like, I'm just going to try to optimize all of the mechanics and advantages that this game offers and just smoke everybody.
Yeah.
I was watching, so I think early on, like I think Reed Boy had the number one spot for a while. Head from Australia, he had it for a little while, and I was just watching their gameplay, and they were playing like the old COD style, like still, which is impressive.
Yeah.
First off, that they can just run around and kill the entire lobby and still win the vast majority of their games is impressive. But I was just like watching like the win numbers and like kind of adding up, and I was like, okay, I can actually get this. I can definitely get number one. So I'd grinded it before, didn't really care what anybody else thought about the way that I was playing the game, but also when my viewership was climbing like crazy, it's pretty easy to just disregard people that are coming in and
Yeah.
like, oh, you camping rad? And it's like, bro, I'm playing video games for a living. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, lots of people like that style because your viewership speaks for itself. I mean, people were learning from you, and all they wanted to do was learn how to win as well. So, I mean, like I said, I think it's probably the minority, but just the loud minority that would come in and get something off calling you a camper. But no, obviously, a
Yeah,
lot of people were there to learn, so it was awesome.
yeah, that 13 to 17 crowd is tough.
Somewhere along the way, you decide that holding that number one spot is super important to you, and your stream is blowing up, and that's obviously super important to you. Obviously, there's massive financial gain that comes from that as well. You start doing 20, 30 possibly even 48-hour streams, what is that? What's that thought process like for you when you're doing those marathon streams?
I mean, it was just like that obsession. Nothing else. That was before I was a dad too.
Yeah, right. Of
So
course.
nothing else in my life mattered except that,
Hmm.
So it was very easy to justify my basically abuse of myself with the super, super long streams. And I think I put on probably almost 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Um, I was terribly unhealthy. I had like bad kidney stones, but going from working in a retail setting, making pennies compared to what I was making at that time. It was so easy to justify abusing myself to just keep on grinding because it was just like I could get done with streaming, but like I just made it would take me 6 months to make in my last job in like one
Right.
stream.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was crazy to even think about. So, and I remember how upset I was during those 6 months. Like I remember telling myself that too at that retail job that I never wanted to feel that feeling again of
Hmm.
just being super frustrated doing some mundane tasks that somebody else told me to do that didn't matter. I was over it, man.
Yeah.
So when I was actually like doing what I loved to do, even if like all the other areas in my life weren't really improving. Like I still had a lot to work on in myself, but just seeing that success in one area was easy for me to justify to myself at that time.
Yeah, and you talked about, putting your health aside, and we talked about during bodybuilding doing steroids. What does it take to do streams that are that long? Are you taking any enhancers to go for 30 hours plus?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we can get into this if you want. I think I've talked about it on stream a couple times. I was completely and utterly addicted to ADHD medication. That's the only way that it's possible, really. Like if doing those crazy hour streams for that like that level of focus too for that long, like you could be 25 hours in and I was still like laser focused
Yeah.
just because I had enough Adderall to wake up an elephant from a dead sleep. It was just it was I mean that attributed a ton to in my health decline in health at that time. And then I guess it declined mentally in other ways. Even though if I'm, successful in one area of my life, like I said, there were so many other areas of my life that were just like declining hard over
Hmm.
that time that I was just ignoring because it was easy to do. And once again, all that mattered: eat, sleep, grind. And I loved living in those modes. But yeah, this definitely performance enhancers, and like I said, I've talked about it on stream a few times. It's one of the it's a weird thing because for me it was one of the most enjoyable times of my life. But then when I look back at it, it's just like, man, who I was at that point is like hard to really be proud of, you know?
And I mean, you talked about how easy it is to justify. I mean, you went from, you're working at a supplement job that you hated, probably not paying super well, to making the best money you've ever made in your life. So, I mean, everyone justifies things in their mind, whether it's good for them or not. It's easy to justify things, and even easier in that
Mhm.
case. Did people in your life know about, the Adderall abuse, and, were they worried about you? Did you have any support in that, or what was the process like for when you eventually? We'll talk about the getting off of it, but in
Mhm.
the actual heat of the moment, did people know what was going on?
I don't think anybody besides my family. My family, they knew,
Yeah,
but and obviously they were definitely worried,
yeah,
wanting me to go to like, well, it wasn't even really take care of myself because I was always the one that took care of myself, like physically. So it was kind of weird for them to tell me to do that when my dad's sitting there smoking a cigarette.
sure, yeah,
But yeah, they were definitely worried about me for sure. I don't know how much my siblings knew, but my mom and dad for sure. I,
yeah.
I would imagine my little brother was probably like proud at seeing me do what I was doing, but he had to have known
Hmm.
that something was going on for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about quitting, because obviously, I mean, if anyone doesn't know, ADHD, Adderall especially, is super addictive, and there's a lot of negative side effects that can come with abuse, including like hallucinations and stuff. How bad did it get? I guess what was the breaking point where you're like, I got to stop doing this?
It was almost a forced quit that then I made the decision myself to do. When I moved to Florida, my ability to get it stopped. So and at that point too, like I was just being a dad, and I
Yeah.
was trying to figure out that whole thing. Emma was just born. Emma was born, moved to Florida, and I would still take sometimes in a much better dose, much more normal dose.
Hmm.
But I basically kind of at one point would just realize like this is not what I can do anymore. I need to just cut cold turkey and just rebuild myself basically mentally.
Thank you guys so much for watching this clip from Mimosa Brunch. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more. And if you want to watch the full interview, just click right here.